What is going on, busy bariatrics? I'm Rob, your favorite BSG man turned bariatric coach, here to help you stop white knuckling your way through chicken, broccoli, and diet-air meal plans, ditch the endless hours of cardio that leave you sweaty but still stuck, and finally fix the habits, patterns, behaviors that got you here in the first place. Whether you're a few weeks post-op, years into maintenance, or just tired of starting over every Monday, you're in the right place. So let's get gritty, let's get honest, and let's get busy. 6 years ago, I had bariatric surgery that completely changed the trajectory of my life. Since then, I've maintained over 150 pounds of weight loss, become a certified fitness and nutrition coach, built Busy Bariatrics, coached hundreds of bariatric patients, and dedicated my career to helping people build a strong, healthy life after surgery. One promise I've always made to this community is simple. I'll tell you the truth even when it's uncomfortable. Today's going to be one of those episodes. So, if you've ever wondered if using a GLP-1 after bariatric surgery means you failed, if you've been telling yourself, I should be able to do this on my own, if you've been fighting food noise, grazing, or weight regain while feeling too embarrassed to talk about it, or maybe you're already taking a GLP-1 and wondering if you still need to track your food, lift weights, and build habits, this episode's going to be for you. About 6 weeks ago, I made one of the biggest health decisions I've made since having bariatric surgery. I started Zepbound. Today I'm going to tell you exactly why. We're going to talk about losing my father, recovering from a torn bicep and a torn rotator cuff, blood work that made me take a hard look at my future, gaining 30 pounds that I couldn't lose despite doing everything I've always done, and the food noise that completely changed the way I lived. I'll also share what these first 6 weeks have actually been like, the wins, the challenges, the side effects, and why this decision had everything to do with my health and nothing to do with taking the easy way out. So whether you're on your morning walk, driving to work, lifting at the gym, or just trying to make it through another busy day, thanks for spending part of it with me. This isn't going to be an episode about whether or not you should take a GLP-1. It's going to be about adopting when life changes and doing whatever it takes to give yourself the best chance at long, healthy, fulfilling life. So let's get busy. So you're probably wondering why at 6 years post-op, I am starting a GLP-1. And for the last 6 years, I've been maintaining about 150 pounds of weight loss and have been cruising anywhere between, I want to say 214 is the lightest weight I got to about really 220. And really, I danced 220 to 225, which I was happy with. So it was 10 pounds after my, photo shoot weight. And then kind of going there. And last year, when I went for my annual checkup, I was talking with my doctor, Dr. Gigliotti, and he brought up some things that he kind of noticed. I still have, even at 225 pounds as of that weigh-in, I still am considered obese with a BMI of 31.4, which still puts me at a class 1 obesity, and I still have sleep apnea. On top of that, when we looked over a lot of the blood panels, we noticed my hemoglobin and AO1C was elevated, as well as my lipid panel, especially with triglycerides and HDL, to the point that he put me on a statin, as well as said, we need to kind of monitor this. He had kicked around the idea of me considering GLP-1s, and I really said, look, I'm within 10 pounds of my lowest weight. Everything's kind of going how I want it to go. I could probably tighten up a couple places and just kind of manage it, and thought, okay, I'll just dial this in. There's also a big concern with myself being a coach and as a bariatric patient as what others would view as me. And I know that shouldn't matter in people's decisions, but the internet can be a bold, scary place. Just look at any comments that are left on my YouTube content seems to always get the biggest feedback. As well as being a coach in the space, there's always a concern of how are people going to view your decisions. I also didn't have the best proper working knowledge of GLP-1s at the time, and felt that I'm never someone who's going to go in and say yes. If you remember anything from this podcast series, it took me about a year to come about on bariatric surgery after doing research and getting an idea of it and where everything happened. Since that summer, I had a little bit of a roller coaster. Starting at the end of July, I tore my distal bicep in my right arm, and then I pretty much needed surgery where I could not lift. I had to completely change all my habits, patterns, behaviors. And as I was coming through rehab with that while being on disability away from work, my dad passed away in October. And as I was going through physical therapy throughout that part, we started to notice that the left arm was actually weaker than the right arm on most of the bicep work. To the fact that like my physical therapist was like, you kind of need to go get that checked out. And after doing another rounds of MRIs and everything else, it turned out I had torn my rotator cuff in my left arm, and it's a partial tear that I am still working on rehabbing and recovering and doing physical therapy twice a week as we talk. On top of that, I also returned to teaching. I still had my full client load as well as running Busy Bariatrics, and there's no surprise there. We are continuing to grow. And as we get bigger, it's a phrase I always kind of repeat is there's new levels and new devils, where as we get bigger, there's new challenges that we have to face and do with that, as well as I still have a family to operate. My oldest, Allie, this year had 8th grade, which meant there was a lot of major milestones throughout that with other commitments. We also increased our sponsorship and awareness throughout the community, which meant that we were on the road this year already. 2026, I think we have like 5 events, whereas on average we do 2. And then you toss in the fact that like there are no sick days left when you go out on disability as a teacher. So I burned through all my sick days, which meant that like sometimes around March and April, I'll take a day or 2 here or there just to recover or sleep or catch up. And I felt like we kept growing, things kept moving bigger, and I kept kicking the can down. And I just had no sick days left to really rest or recover. Toss on the fact that I still have sleep apnea and there is a high level of stress. I couldn't get myself to recover properly. And I say all that because I think if there was like any 1 or 2 of those things, I probably would have been fine. Maybe even 3 or 4, I probably would have maintained and just been like, this is a reason season. But all that kind of piled up. And next thing you know, it was like just an avalanche of weight, like 30 pounds just packed on, and nothing that major. I was still eating about the same breakfasts every day. I was still eating the same lunches every day. I will admit, like dinners kind of went more off the rails as I was dining out more. I was drinking a little bit more, but not to the point where like this should have had like a major change. I think more of like 2 years ago where I was still like kind of at the same weight, but still kind of getting it. And it's not like I forgot how to lose weight, and it's not like I forgot how to get most of my clients amazing results after bariatric surgery. So I pulled all the levers that I would with a regular client. First, I reviewed my calorie intake and I just tightened up and said, look, I'm going to clean up weekends a little bit more, which is the first place I stopped tracking. I then reevaluated my macro split. I gave myself a little bit more fats to keep me fuller for longer, kept the protein about where we did, and started tweaking with the carbs. I'd go up a little bit, down a little bit, and I couldn't get the scale to consistently move in one way or another. Then I thought maybe I was overtraining, because between physical therapy 2 days a week and still a 4-day split, that's a 6-day split, which I've done before and had a lot of success with. But at the same time, like, we have to also look at the fact that like my body needs to heal and recover while getting everything. So we scaled it back down to about 3 workouts a week and then 2 physical therapy workouts. So it's more of a 5-day split. Cardio, we gently increased. So I went from about 10,000 steps a day to 11,000 to 1,250 and then 1,400, and still couldn't get that to work. And then blood work kind of still seemed to like kind of just like putter. Like we couldn't get any of the needles to move properly. Now, keep in mind with this, I'm still checking in with my coach weekly and going through this. I'm still going to physical therapy and I'm getting everything. And there were just some challenges that the last year kind of gave me that I really felt like I had fully in, and they just creeped up quickly. It was grazing in between meals because there was so much food around. I will say, like, looking at the funeral, like, started, like, a lot of my habits started to, like, just slip. Not, like, completely derail, but something of, like, oh, there's donuts or pastries out, I would get that. Or after dinner, I would go back into the pantry every now and then and be like, just a handful of pretzels here. But even then, like, when I was looking at, like, when I was planning trips or anything else, I felt like it was, like, constantly thinking about, well, when am I going to get breakfast? When am I going to get lunch? When am I going to get dinner? Like, what's the next thing I was doing? And this caloric deficit, more than any other one I put myself in, I just felt like every day I was just going through the same log and slog about food. And it felt like I was really putting about every ounce of discipline towards resisting food. If fast food came into our house, I was a bit more irritable around it. If there wasn't a clear plan for meals, which unfortunately, when your life is that chaotic between dance competitions, eighth grade award ceremonies, both of our kids' schedules, the end of year school schedule, like all of these things came in. So it's not like any one of those things, but we got off a lot of our regular meal plans just because it was impossible to plan with award shows, ceremonies, and everything else. And it wasn't really that I was hungry through a lot of all this. It was so much more that I was just exhausted thinking about food. And meanwhile, while all of this happens, the scale started to creep up. I felt like I got through the funeral relatively well. I got through Thanksgiving and I was still at like 220. Holidays, like I creeped up to about 228 and was like, well, that's kind of perfect. January, I'll dial it in. And then January, it did not work. I don't know if it was between having to do a lot of my steps indoors. Like we had an incredibly brutal January where it was like 17 degrees because I was working later at night on projects. I would sleep in a little bit later because when you hit those like teen degree weathers, like just all of a sudden 5 o'clock workouts were not happening like they used to. And again, like these are little like holes in the pipe that kept letting things leak out of a caloric deficit. So it's like I'm staying up a little bit later and then I'm sleeping in because I'm sleeping in. Like I'm not as tired as I am at 9 o'clock. And then because I'm not as tired at 9 o'clock, I'm staying up till 11. And then because it's 11, I'm not waking up again. And like my boundaries slowly started to get blurred. And then a part of me also is saying like, okay, with physical therapy, I'm healing myself. So this is totally fine. And even now, like I'm playing into my rotator cuff, which feels a little bit better, much better than it did in January. But I'm doing this. I know that my body has gone from like 215 to 214 relatively easy when we did the photo shoot about 2 years ago. But like something was just different this time. My recovery was poor. I kept feeling exhausted. And I felt like I just, each weekend was getting a little bit tougher to do this. And when I got to 250, I realized like I cannot do this anymore. That's where it was like almost like, look, I'm going to fight. I'm going to struggle. I'm going to work. I was talking to my coach. We adjusted macros. Eric was phenomenal through all this, but like I just could not get everything. And when you look at like the holistic picture, a lot of it really came down to the fact I was struggling with emotional regulation, whether it be my dad's death, my family's history of dying relatively early. We've had a lot of family members who have done that. I am eligible for history of heart disease because it is on both sides of the family. And when we just couldn't get my cholesterol together, it started to add up. Like all the data markers started to get a little bit nervous. Like I still, even after bariatric surgery at my lowest weight, when we did our sleep study from the pulmonologist, I still had sleep apnea. And meanwhile, when I was looking at how I was gaining weight this time around, more than anything else, I was just carrying it all right in my midsection, to the fact that I know that that's just visceral fat increasing and things that I was worried. When I take a look at all this and realize like it was a pulmonology appointment that made me realize that I might not live till 40, I realized like I did not want to go back and I was willing to take whatever chance it was to get back in. So I think a lot of the times when people say like, well, Rob, you still look good. Like, what is the problem here? And it's not necessarily like I'm trying to get skinny. And I hope like my content, the podcast and everything else has shown this over time. It's more that I'm trying to stay alive. I want to make sure that all my biomarkers are in the best place possible and that I give myself the best opportunity. Toss on into that like I've just talked with a lot more professionals in the last year. This summer camp, I did want there to be a lot more focus on GLP-1s and having a chance to sit down with Summer Kessel, who is an amazing registered dietitian. She is a few podcast episodes back of this episode. If you want to go listen to her episode, you can just tell like I'm kind of kicking the tires in that episode of like, well, how does this work? And she brings out in part of the episode that like for some people who have sudden weight increase, and that could either be like postpartum or even after major traumatic experiences, a GLP-1 can help reduce the food noise so that you reduce immediately and get everything back together. And I think of like how Kylie did such a great job of maintaining her weight loss for years, and then her third child like just threw her for a spin, and it was something as simple as making sure that she got back on a GLP-1 and the weight just kind of drips off for her and gets everything done. And that kind of changed a bit. Like knowing that like my coach Eric, when he started to feel off and got his lab work done, he noticed a massive dip in his testosterone and went on TRT, testosterone replacement therapy. I'm talking to Beth Ferrico about how her lab markers pretty much pointed that she was due with menopause and perimenopause to need hormone replacement therapy. And seeing like some of these people who are some of the best in the space use their tools without shame, be open and honest about it, I wanted to be on the same page of that, because I think as a professional, I've always shared in my weight loss journey, like, yes, I have done this through bariatric surgery, and a GLP-1 is just the next chapter of my evolution as I continue to do that. I wouldn't want people to see, like, as the weight comes off in this section, to think that like this was simply like we increased fiber or rechanged the macros and did anything. And this is also with me like going to therapy weekly, as well as journaling and doing the mindset work around food and doing all the work with Connie Stapleton and Tabitha Johnson and other people. But I also realized like I don't really judge anyone for having bariatric surgery. I also don't judge people in our community when they go on GLP-1s. One of the most admirable people who I've always respected in this space is Jamie Mills, who the sleep dietitian. When she came out for bariatric surgery, like she received a lot of flack from other dietitians of you should know how to manage your nutrition if you are a bariatric patient. And the same flack happened to her when she went on a GLP-1. And I'm not surprised if I start to get a bit of flack from people, but the more people that I tell, I feel like it just works better, and I want to have that upfront honesty with you with everything else. I also don't judge people for using a CPAP machine to manage their sleep apnea, or people who take statins to manage their cholesterol. So why am I judging myself for needing another tool in my process if the goal is just to stay alive and be the healthiest, fittest version of me? So this is kind of where it gets like crazy, because with the time jumps and everything else, this episode is going to air the end of July. I want to say like July 30th, but I don't have the calendar up. And as of this recording, it is July 6th. So this episode will appear when I'm 6 weeks in. I came in, as of this recording, I'm about 3 weeks in. I didn't want to announce anything when I decided to go on a GLP-1 because it did take a little bit of time between my primary care physician, my insurance, and my pharmacist to all get on the same page as far as insurance approval for everything, but it did get insured because of my comorbidities. So 3 weeks in, like I started on a 2.5 milligram dose of Zepbound, and within the first 3 weeks, I've lost like 7 pounds. Even with that, my doctor, when I went for the monthly follow-up, because I wanted to make sure I got all of this scheduled consistently, I wanted to get into the doctor so that I didn't have any issues with insurance. So I went at about the 2.5 week mark. I went for my 1 month checkup. And even then they're like, this is a good movement for this, but just to be safe, let's move you to 5 milligrams to continue to go up with my doctor's office recommendation. If anything, to give everyone an idea of what I'm doing, I am tracking probably more consistently now than prior to bariatric surgery. And really it has like that same gusto of, I want to make sure all my data is as accurate as possible so that my primary care physician and my coach, Eric, has everything consistent. And talking to Eric, we kind of retooled the macros as well after we started to go on. And we'll kind of go over how we're moving our training plan as things went through as well. So something that I noticed is like almost immediately, it was like I could almost like, taste colors and see sound, as they say for people when they have like some earth-shattering difference. It's like all of a sudden there was just this huge relief of I just did not feel hungry. And that was really the main side effect that I felt. I didn't really get nauseous. I had one meal where I felt like a little bit rough. But something that I did notice too is traditionally, I do like having an alcoholic beverage. And even then, I kind of like to have more than just one alcoholic beverage. Like I've always been someone who's like, look, if I am drinking, I'm going to have a good time. And I'm going to probably have closer to like 3 or 4 as opposed to 1 to 2. And the first time I drank on Zepbound, I kind of was like, I had one and I was like, I am good. It's also like caused me to like pause and hesitate a bit when it comes to my snacking, where it was like, look, I just don't have the same desire to snack like I used to. Another thing I noticed as I was going through my progress pics and just trying clothes, in the last like 3 months when I would try on some of my tighter clothes, I felt like I just had an inner tube around my midsection. Like you could see my love handles prominently coming out. And that's where like I looked at like an idea of like, maybe there's some insulin resistance going on. Maybe I'm struggling with just carrying it all in one spot. But all of a sudden, it's like these 7 pounds that came off, like came right off my stomach in midsection and kind of just leaned out on that. But there was also like some notices of food noise, which I thought I had a really good control on. But then this just brought it to a whole different level. Whereas like evenings now, I kind of always have to have like a little bit of the mental reframe and reset of like, hey, we know that we don't need this food. Like I'm going to pause. I'm going to reflect on, am I overstimulated? Am I using the halt method? Am I hungry, angry, being lazy or tired? And I never get the full halt system right, which is why I should have put it down with myself. But I always joke about the dwarves. Am I overstimulated, understimulated? Am I drinking because I'm happy, sad, eating because of this? And for the first time ever, like I could walk past food and do an amazing job. So I'm recording this on July 6th. July 4th, we went to a full barbecue and they had like really good Italian hoagie spread from, God, I already forget the name of it, but it was a really good sandwich shop. I got to check with my buddy Tony where he got them from. But they're phenomenal. And before, it would be something that like, well, I'm going to have one every hour, or I'm going to pace out, or think about, well, I had 2 bites and then had it. And I really just had like 2 cuts of a hoagie tray. And I was like, that was really good. I'm full. And then I kind of just left the food away. And where before I would probably graze at the Doritos, I just didn't. And then like at the end of the night when we were coming home, we ordered Domino's because like we didn't really have a full plan of how long we would stay at the party, like what we would do when we get home. We kind of had leftover burgers and hot dogs, but at the same time, like we kind of were like, what can we work with for here? And the kids kind of wanted Domino's, and I was like, you know what? Like, that's fine. Let's get Domino's. And traditionally, like, if I've had like a couple adult beverages and I've been out all day and my hunger would creep up on me, it would not be surprising if I could have 3 to 4 slices of Domino's and a piece or two of their chocolate lava cake, which I absolutely like. And this time it's like I had 1 slice of pizza, 1 chocolate lava cake, and was like, you know what? I'm more than good and full, and I just went to bed. And I think a lot of the times when we look at like how do we dial it in, it's simply like going from like 3 slices of pizza to maybe one, and instead of 3 things of lava cake on a night out to one. And it's things like that that really make me work well. Now, it also means like I have to be very intentional on my nutrition. So, like right now, I am starting my morning with my protein coffee and some carbs. I'm making like a Galaxy Edge drink with some protein cereal in it so that I get like a little bit of a carb after my fasted cardio. But then, like, I can have my next big meal just be like 200 grams of chicken breast over a bed of lettuce, just like I used to, and some balsamic vinaigrette. And that'll keep me full till like dinner, which sometimes, depending on if I have client calls or coaching calls, that might go till like 8, 9 o'clock at night. And just because we're in that season right now, sometimes it's like 10 o'clock because it'll be like, oh, let me get this one thing done, or oh, let me get this one check done. And that can sometimes happen with it. But for the first time in like the last year or two, I could really like finish my day, climb into bed, and instead of wondering about what I'm going to eat, I just think like maybe I'll deal with it tomorrow, and it lets me go through it. So, like if there's anyone who's still listening to this and is like, look, you're cheating, I really don't think I have. And if they think I failed, I look at it as like I'm putting myself on track. And then there's other people like, oh, this must be great. You're not going to track anymore. And if anything, I'm tracking much more intentionally because with Eric and I want to make sure that we're getting the right split so that we're maintaining as much muscle mass as possible, and that my nutrition is fully on point for everything. So like even if I go over my calorie goal or under my calorie goal, we're kind of really adjusting based on medication dosage, seeing what it goes on. And this is what we do for most of our clients. And it was kind of cool to talk with Eric of like, giving my insight of, hey, here's how we do it in Busy Bariatrics, and here's how we adjust based on when dosages come in or when our clients' hunger cues change. And that was like something that I think was really cool is, like we've worked with so many clients to help them lose 15, 30, 45 pounds on a GLP-1 and knowing exactly like, here's when we adjust the macros, here's how we prioritize the plates or retool with everything. For a lot of people too, they think they don't have to lift during this time because the weight will come off. And if anything, we're probably going to increase my lifting as we go through this period, if only because like I'm pretty sure we're getting done with physical therapy on the rotator cuff by the end of this summer, and we want to make sure that everything's putting it in. Other people think like GLP-1s replace healthy habits, and if anything, it's made it so intentional now of like, I have to get a vegetable in with every meal, because one of the biggest things we notice with clients is if their vegetables or fiber intake drops, constipation creeps up really big. Same with water. I think that always gets overlooked is because I'm not really as thirsty or trying to like replace hunger cues with water cues and drinking water. It's very common for me like the first couple days to be like, I can go 3 or 4 hours without drinking, whereas now I have to have it fully locked and dialed in. And then there's another concern of like, are GLP-1s going away? And I have to say, like, I really believe that GLP-1s are going to be one of the most researched products on the market as this continues to go on. There are new case studies being shown with GLP-1s linking to brain health, heart health, inflammation, obesity medicine. I know the FDA just recently approved it as something to help with sleep apnea, and that was probably one of the biggest revelations for me of, if I could get my sleep apnea under control, why would I not want to make sure that that is all in? So I look at the time, wow, already like 30 minutes we've been talking about this, but as we finish up and going through this, I'm not really changing a lot of my opinion on like, how do we do fitness and nutrition? How do we help clients on GLP-1s? Because like, even with the research and as a coach of someone with that, it does not change my opinion just because I am on it. I still believe protein comes first. I still believe that lifting weights has to be non-negotiable when you are on a GLP-1, and I still believe that tracking is going to build the proper awareness to make sure that everything's in, and that your calendar still needs to be more intentional about when you're eating, what you're eating, and how you're eating, as well as doing the work of behavior change. So I'm taking a GLP-1 as well. That doesn't mean I'm going to stop my journaling or doing the mental work around my relationship with food. And I still believe that no medication is going to be able to replace habits as of this time. And that ultimately, you can hear it on my episode with Tab Johnson of, there are plenty of people who go on GLP-1 medications and lose nothing because they are not working on the habits, patterns, and behaviors that get them there. So as I go forward, I really just wanted to share this because how I kind of went through everything as of this recording, I am sharing with my team tonight. I'm sharing with the clients earlier than this, and then my email list, podcast list, and everything else comes in. So that's why I always say, listen to the podcast. You kind of get some of the better stuff and the updated stuff. But I don't want to make this fully about like my GLP-1 journey. We're still going to have many episodes talking about our clients who take GLP-1s, our clients who are thriving after bariatric surgery, our clients who are learning to lift heavy, our clients who are learning to finally advocate for themselves. But I want to make sure that you have the full transparency that's going through. So if you're taking a GLP-1, I hope this reminds you that you're not broken. If you're considering one, please do what I did and talk to your doctor. And if you've judged someone for taking one, I hope this gives you a different perspective, or who knows, maybe you just hop off, like my subscription or my email list or Instagram or anything else. And I hope you understand that the 365-pound version of me was screaming that I didn't want to live. And this version of me is doing everything possible to stay alive. So whatever tools help you become a healthier person, live longer, and show up for the people you love, don't let your pride stop you from using them. So I'm going to, finish talking now. So if today's episode resonated with you, I'd love you to do 2 things. First, share it with someone who may be struggling in silence. You never know who needs to hear this for permission to ask for help or to even have the conversation about a GLP-1 or bariatric surgery. And second, if you're still enjoying the podcast, do me a favor and leave a rating and review, because it helps us reach more bariatric patients and GLP-1 users who are looking for honest, science-based coaching. And as always, remember, keep getting busy.